Yes.
Yeah, share कर भाई.
तो कर दो. There you go, Sky.
Oh, yep, just one moment. So I'll share this with everyone before we start.
Publish the video.
आ गया.
हाँ, आपका वीडियो चालू है. बोलो.
Okay, so shall we start?
Yeah.
Sure. आशीष को छोड़ के सब लोग म्यूट पे जाते हैं.
I don't know what's happened. I cannot see Ashish. Oh, there you are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So, when we were talking about the brands that are most loved or
Yes.
ideal,
Yes.
what were some of the brands that were mentioned?
Yeah. So some of the common names that came up were LG and Samsung, obviously.
Mhm.
Apart from that, a few names which came up strongly was Vivo was one of them,
Mhm.
which is again into smartphones. OnePlus did come up quite a bit. OnePlus came up in both ways in terms of being, a very cool brand, a trendy brand, as well as in terms of its advertising campaigns. It came up today as well. The other name that came up, which was with slightly older age group, was Raymond's.
Which one?
Raymond's.
Raymond's, yeah.
Yes. And that was to do with their tagline specifically, which mentions about being a complete man. However, they very strongly spoke about the quality of the fabric also, and hence the durability of the fabric.
So for the younger generations,
Yes.
were there any particular brands that were mentioned sort of differently?
I don't think so. I personally felt that probably though we use the terminology cool or trendy brand, I think the kind of audience we met, for them being cool and trendy is more about being cool and trendy as a person. So from the responses, somewhere I felt they were not really looking at brands as cool brands, especially when it comes to this kind of a category, which is electronic goods. And so if you look at their answers when we were probing, why a particular brand is cool, so why LG is cool, why Samsung is cool, it was more to do with their personal experience of the brand, being helpful in terms of good quality products. So instead of the imagery being cool, it was more about the product experience. Remember, you had also
Mm.
added that question in chat. So
So
somewhere, yeah.
mhm. Sorry. So for younger generation, what do you think that if we ask in a different terminology, they might think of a different brand?
Uh, I think it's not
Or
about the
is it
terminology,
same?
it's just the category. I mean,
Mm,
if I would have asked them about smartphones specifically, if I would have asked them about, let's say, social media platforms, those are the things that people consider as cool or trendy, right?
mm-hmm,
It may be something that they use in their college or university, maybe home appliances, electronic devices, when it came to that, and hence we had kept it open. But I think when we asked them, remember, they spontaneously spoke about brands like Zara, which is
mm,
a fashion brand. Now that was a cool brand, and there they spoke about being, a brand which is has a show off value. I think that those are the attributes which make a brand cool brand, right? But when it came to something like consumer electronics, I think the reasons were very rational rather than emotional. It was more to do
mm,
with the products, the durability, cost effectiveness, having variety. So it was more like, though we were asking for them to tell the cool brands or the trendy brands, the answers were more like the brands which I like, or the brands
mm,
that I have been using. I think it's
mm,
just to do with the category rather than the terminology.
mm. So what you're saying is sort of um, they don't really think of home appliances being cool and trendy
It's
at
yeah,
all,
it's a
sort of
dry
thing.
it's a dry category, to be very
Mm,
honest. Unless you bring in smartphones into the picture, which automatically came in for the younger generation.
mm. And when we were talking about some of the values that make brands sort of, well, first about being ideal or being
Yes,
loved, what were
yes.
some of the
I
values that were mentioned?
Sure. So the common value which came across generations was being, customer friendly and more friendly to the Indian market. So an example to
Mm-hmm.
that was in automobile, something like a Maruti Suzuki, which understands the Indian customer in
Mm-hmm.
terms of giving the kind of products at the price points which is more appealing to the Indian, kind of a psyche. So right from Maruti Suzuki to something like Raymond's, which
Mm-hmm.
understands the Indian customer in terms of the fit, in terms of the durability that is required from the cloth, the kind of cool feeling that is required from the cloth, especially in Indian conditions. So I think the common factor which I felt was being, Indian customer friendly, if I may use that term,
When
specifically for the market.
mm, when people say they are sort of fit for the Indian community,
Mm.
is it sort of in terms of the product or some of the features, or in terms of like the way they communicate to
I
people?
I think it is both ways, but it was more to do with the product,
Mm,
because the examples they gave, because we were probing on those lines, were
yeah.
more in terms of the product features being Indian conditions friendly.
Mm,
Yesterday also, I think someone mentioned that LG has understood the Indian customers really well. And to add to that, the examples they gave were about quick servicing.
mm,
So the life is good, and the care angle was from that particular thing, that the servicing is really fast and really very prompt. So I think
mm,
it was more to do with the product or the service features. There
mhm,
were a few examples, like today itself, the lady mentioned Surf Excel having online campaigns related to Indian festivals. Now that was a
mhm,
very emotional angle and a memorable campaign for her.
mhm,
But that is not what was making the brand ideal. It was just memorable.
mm.
So I think that was the difference.
Okay. Then what other values do you think were mentioned?
So one is that, the other thing which also came up was the popularity angle. And I think when they were
Mm,
mentioning the word popular, what they meant was more visible. Though I think visible
mm,
as a term is not a very consumer friendly term which generally comes up. People
mhm,
tend to tend to use the word popular. But when we were asking about what does popularity mean to them, what they essentially were trying to indicate is that a brand being popular means that a lot of people are using it, and hence that basically means that the product quality is good for so many people to use it. I can
Mm,
see the brand at whenever I go to people's places, which basically is indicating visibility.
okay, so when we say visibility, you
Mhm.
mean like people around me, a lot of people use it,
Yes, yes, yes.
and not necessarily being advertised or.
No. Visibility in terms of product visibility, not the
Mm,
brand visibility,
okay.
which adds to the confidence for me to use the brand.
Mm. So, after we talked about all these generations, right?
Yes, yes.
I think in because our one of our hypotheses was for LG, we thought because like Gen Z, for
Hmm.
example,
Hmm.
I guess they are not as closely related to home appliances,
Hmm. Hmm.
and LG's strength is relatively like
Hmm.
more in the home appliance section.
Yes, yes, yes.
So we thought it maybe for Gen Z their sort of passion or their like favor of LG would be less.
Hmm.
But I think overall everyone sort of mentioned LG a lot.
Yes, yes,
And why
yes.
do you think it's so well
I,
known?
I think personally, I mean, going by whatever we found in all the six groups, I mean, apart from the generational cuts, uh, what has really happened is apart from LG and Samsung, and I think you must have also observed this, that there was no third strong brand for them to even talk about. Remember when we came to the persona or the image exercises, a lot of times you had to like ping me on chat
Yeah.
that maybe we can skip this, right? Because there was hardly anything that was coming up. So I think what has happened is LG and Samsung, both brands are so synonymous with consumer electronics right now that for them it's almost like very close to each other, and hence they get mentioned invariably.
Mm. So when we're talking about LG and Samsung in terms of home appliances,
Mhm.
do you think there was a difference
Yes, yes,
or
there clearly was, but I think it was the difference was more not because of the performance within home appliances. I think the overarching fact that Samsung is so strong into smartphones had a lot of bearing on the kind of image that Samsung had, even in the home appliances category. So basically, in the entire DG, I felt the first part. I mean, after the introduction and the ideal brands, when we came to consumer electronics, home appliances, and IT devices, which was my concern even at the briefing stage that people might mix up everything.
Mhm,
I think that's what was happening. So I don't think even when we were asking about the imagery,
mhm.
people were looking at it from specifically the home appliances lens. They were looking at it from the brand lens.
That's actually that was our intention. So it's a
Exactly, exactly,
yeah.
exactly. But then because of that, what was happening is then Samsung was definitely standing out as compared to LG, because smartphone as a category was very
Mm,
heavily and strongly pulling Samsung into a different direction.
mm. So I guess because of smartphones, what were some of the values that people thought Samsung was stronger in?
So one is definitely the younger, bit, the youthfulness,
Mm,
which came up very strongly again across all groups. So, and that came up in the personality or personification exercise. So they may not have used the word youthful or youth,
mm-hmm,
but when we were asking them, about personalities or even the celebrities, the kind of answers that came up, uh, almost everywhere Samsung was around 5 to 10 years younger than LG.
mm,
So one is youthful.
mm-hmm,
The other is also the good looking and the stylishness, because being stylish is something that comes up very prominently again in smartphones, because you tend to look at it day in and day out. Otherwise, with respect to refrigerators, ACs, or with microwaves, there's only so much of style element that can come in, right? But with smartphones, a lot of styling element did come in for Samsung as compared to LG. In fact, I don't remember anyone mentioning stylish as a attribute for LG at all across all 8 sessions.
So, so in your opinion, when they were talking about LG and Samsung, is it just because of smartphones that there's this difference?
So one is that also I think the other thing that came up as a common feedback was that though both of them were looked at as innovative brands, and we discussed about it a lot throughout the
Yeah.
sessions. I think somewhere I felt Samsung definitely was looked at as the first mover, someone who is more innovative, more creative. Though there were not specific examples that people could give to support this statement, uh, though we asked for it. But today, I think, and in I think one of the groups day before yesterday, someone mentioned about the curved TV or the OLED
Yeah.
or the UHD, which came up by Samsung first and then followed by LG. So I think that is also one of the things which is a differentiator, that Samsung is something or a brand which innovates first. LG sort of follows.
Okay. So now we're talking about innovation.
Mm. Mm.
So, because innovative, like I told you earlier,
Yes,
it's a
yes,
very big word,
yes,
right?
yes, yes.
So we want to understand, depending on the generation, maybe if there's a difference in what they mean by innovative,
Mhm.
or depending on like when we say LG is innovative and
Mm.
Samsung is innovative, if there's any difference.
Mhm. I think to be very honest, like you very rightly said, that innovative is such a big term. I think it was used also very loosely throughout the sessions. I mean, rather than probably giving a thought to that particular word, I think it's a very common and a fancy word to use related to anything and everything which is electronics. Even in our general discussions, we tend to use this word very, very commonly, right? This is very innovative, this is very innovative, but not really getting into the background about it. So when we try to ask or dig deeper into innovative, and you must have found out as well that they were really struggling to answer what exactly is innovative. However, some of the things that did come up as a common feedback was having a wider product portfolio is a sign of innovation. I think on day one we had asked this, that if you have a wider portfolio, is it a good thing or a bad thing? And a lot of people said yes, yes, it is a good thing, because then that means you have the kind of expertise across different products, which in a way then makes you as a very innovative brand. So you are into smartphones, you are into ACs, refrigerators, and so many things. That means you have expertise into all these things. So having a wider product portfolio is a sign of being innovative. And then within the product portfolio, if you have even more variety, then that is also a sign of being innovative. So like today, the girl said that in the 20 sub 20,000 range, if I have 10 models in Samsung versus let's say 2 or 3 models in Vivo or whatever, then that gives me a wider choice in terms of selection. And then because there are 10 models, obviously there will be some differentiation in the features, which then makes me think, oh wow, Samsung is such an innovative brand because it has so many different features at different price points.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Yes.
I think one other thing that what I felt was like sort of for smartphones, a lot of people think it's innovative because always new models,
Mm-hmm.
and regardless if I even know what it is,
Yeah.
it's like something new,
Yes.
innovative.
Yes. Yes.
And do you think that's sort of what happened with OnePlus and Xiaomi
Yes,
being
yes,
mentioned as being innovative.
yes. Very true. Especially with OnePlus, like the examples they said. Now that's also because it is a very like recent thing that the 120 hertz display or the 90 hertz display. So I think these examples did come up because it's a very recent thing. But when we were asking it at a very brand level, they couldn't really say a lot of things apart from a few mentions like maybe having uh, different color schemes, or like Whirlpool today was mentioned because it was the first brand to bring in floral theme into the designs for refrigerator and ACs. I don't know if that is right, but yeah, I mean, she had a point that at least it was innovative in terms of the product design.
Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. And this is sort of um we sort of talked about this a little bit earlier as well,
Yes, yeah.
but because when we were talking about cool brands, right?
Hmm, hmm.
And LG wasn't really mentioned, while Samsung was mentioned as being a cool brand.
Yes,
And we wonder, because you guys were talking in local language,
yes.
so is the like the terminology of being cool for Samsung,
Mhm.
is it first, how do you say it? Like, how does it translate?
So
Or,
cool is even in local language. I mean, Hindi is what we were majorly using. This term is used as is. I mean, you will still
mm,
say it's a cool thing.
okay, okay, okay. Then we sort of, it was just a, we
Yeah.
weren't sure.
No.
So trendy
It's
also, it's just, you just say trendy.
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
But cool is a more college or a hip term.
Hmm?
Cool is a more younger term, sort of
So it's more for
more
the
youthful term.
millennials.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Okay, moving on.
Yeah.
So, in terms of brand communication,
Yes.
so what were some of the brand communication or advertisements that were mentioned as being ideal?
So more than ideal, I think the memorable ads that some of them mentioned. I think General was one of the ads that they spoke about, which I
Hmm.
remember. Oh General
Oh,
or
general. Yep.
General is now how they advertise. I
Yep.
think what the guy had mentioned is that they are advertising, and I have also seen that ad actually. They are advertising in terms of how the products of General have a longer value shelf life, and hence they are durable, and because of which there will be less of e-waste, because you will not then discard these products very regularly, and hence it is environmental friendly. So
Mm,
the guy mentioned that it talks about both the product feature, the durability angle, and it
mhm,
also covers that as a brand they are caring about environment, which is very impactful.
mm. Do you think it sort of came up because of this current situation as well, or it
I
was?
don't think so. I don't think so because it's just talking about e-waste. If you see, it's not really talking about health or hygiene. It's
Mm-hmm,
it's just talking about being environmental friendly,
mm,
which I don't think it's a COVID related thing
mm.
directly.
So, like, even before all of this corona thing,
Yes,
environmentally being friendly was also a big value for that.
yes. Yeah,
Interesting.
because I remember I think this guy, or I think yesterday someone had mentioned about NDTV and Samsung having some sort of a tie-up wherein uh, you know on Samsung phones you actually shoot the entire news bulletin and then telecast it, which talks about the Samsung camera quality. But though he did not mention it, Samsung also has a tie-up with NDTV regarding some environmental related program which comes on weekend. So I think the environmental friendly thing is something that most of the brands kind of do something related to it. So that's the reason he could recall it maybe.
Mm. So, in your opinion, for like home appliance brands, what I felt was sort of being cool is not actually very important, but it's rather being sort of trustworthy, durable,
Yes,
those kind of what we consider like core values.
yes,
Is
are more important.
you agree? For older generations?
Yes, yes, yes. Because if you see across the groups,
Mhm.
they were more concerned about being value for money. I think the kind of terms that came up, value for money, durability, long life. I remember, I think on day one, this guy mentioned I brought a Godrej fridge first. It lasted for 30 years, then the second one for 15 years, then 10 years, and then eventually I
Yeah.
changed to LG, right? Because the durability came down. So I think it boils down to these core values of durability, being value for money, and efficient service. I think that was also very strongly mentioned,
Mm,
and which was actually a very strong point for LG. It came up quite a bit across groups that service quality is very good for LG in
mm,
terms of being both availability of parts and being prompt in terms of service. So I think
mm,
these basic core values did matter. I think except for today's group, the last one we did,
mhm,
where this girl mentioned a very interesting thing that uh, every time in home appliances ads you have
mm,
housewives or older ladies, older men being shown. Why not have a young lady, or a college girl being shown using a washing machine or a microwave, so that then we feel that this brand is more youthful. And I felt it was a very good suggestion, but it
mm.
was a one-off thing. I mean, it did
Mm.
not come up in other groups at all.
Yeah, that I think that was sort of the hypothesis that we had though, that
Hmm.
there would be a big difference because there's a big generation gap.
Yeah. So
And
so
for the
this particular last day, as in today, was to some extent an indicator because these guys at least believed that being youthful as a brand is a positive thing, and we
Mm,
did double check that as well. But I think this was the youngest lot as well.
yes, that's right.
So for them, I think the category itself, the home appliances category, is at a is at a distance from their current life stage, if I may use that term.
Mm,
Like I think yesterday someone had mentioned that home appliances is a thing you start connecting with once you get married and once you have a family. Then you know that's when you will start buying a AC or a fridge for yourself. Until
mm,
then, you're just like living off your parents.
mm. I think another interesting thing was for the older generation,
Mhm.
they had some idea or image of LG brand being
Mm.
associated with smartphones,
Mm.
and it sort of, I guess, had some I don't know, some negative effect on the
Mm.
brand image
Sorry, I missed that. They have a image of LG being associated
with smartphones.
with smartphones. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Mm.
So even if they didn't actually use it,
Yes.
they saw it, they
Mm.
heard about it. But
Mm.
then for the younger generations,
Mm.
nobody ever sort of mentioned it.
Yes, yes. Because probably they haven't heard about it at all.
Mm. So
So
do you agree that what sort of influence it might have had on the or for the older generation?
I think so because I remember one of them, or in fact, two of them mentioning that so it is both positive and negative. So one of them had mentioned that the fact that they are still trying, that they at least tried to be in the smartphones and try to do enter into that particular category of products itself shows that it's an innovative brand because it is trying to get into different things. But then the counterpoint to that was that the very fact that they did not succeed in that particular category eventually means that there's something wrong, and it's kind of an unsuccessful attempt, which leads to the negative imagery. and
Mm,
and I think with their age group, probably the older ones who have seen LG phones being advertised and then probably going off market or not being so visible will
mhm.
have that impact. I think that the people that we talked today were a very young lot, and maybe they haven't really come across a lot of LG smartphones.
Okay. And then Okay, so moving on.
Yeah.
Talking about this COVID situation, right?
Hmm, hmm, hmm,
So obviously, I think among the four countries that we're doing this call
hmm,
study with,
hmm,
you
hmm, hmm.
guys are sort of in the more serious situation where you're locked down.
Yeah.
So we wonder if when we were talking about health and hygiene,
Yes.
depending on the generation, was there some difference on their
I think so. So the first part is very clear that health and hygiene is a focus area now for everyone. So that was consistent across all the groups. I think the second part of the question is somewhere I felt that probably people interpreted it not exactly the way we expected it to be. Like when
Mhm,
we were asking that whether home appliances brands should emphasize on health and hygiene, I think it's a no-brainer answer would be yes, right? Because
mm,
I mean, anyone would say yes, given the current scenario. However, when we try to, ask, how they should do it, whether it should be the societal angle or the family angle, I think the answers were more like, societal angle is like, a larger set of audience which covers family as well. So that's kind of a safe answer or a
mm.
or a logical answer, and
I but
hence, yeah, and hence when we asked about the long term or the short term, I think they everyone settled for a long term because they feel that that's the way to approach post COVID as well, because everyone would be more careful about health and hygiene as individuals, and hence probably the brand should be. I think the guy today in the last group, he
mhm.
mentioned an interesting point, which I think was what our intention was for the question. He said that some of the brands in the end are just having a hashtag at stay home, stay safe, or just a message at the end, stay home, stay safe, which for him indicates that the brand is now talking about health and hygiene. So
Mm.
be it any brand, just saying stay home, stay safe in the end, it kind of gives like a that I'm caring for you, and just take care of yourself kind of a feeling.
So do you think that regardless of the content of the communication, just
Mhm.
sort of one
So yeah, because the thing is that when we were asking them about marketing communication, I think it was very difficult for them to comprehend
mm,
how an ad would emphasize on health and hygiene when the ad is made for a brand which is into home appliances, unless it is a very specific product itself which talks about health and hygiene, like the guy mentioned today about I think higher ACs, which
yeah.
which talks about the air filter and how it
Mhm,
controls pollution. But that's a very literal way, right? I mean, it is talking about a product feature.
mm,
So I mean, and hence it is emphasizing on health. But I think our question was whether a brand should take the route of health and hygiene in terms of communicating itself as a brand, which uh, which I think is a very layered concept for a normal consumer to understand, interpret, and then give out a story. I quite like the way, but actually the lady, the way she answered, I think what she mentioned is if a AC brand, for example, talks about some home hacks about how to clean the AC filter in your
mm,
COVID times. I think that was an interesting idea, because then what's happening here is that because all of us are in lockdown and there are no, the servicing guys who can come and clean your AC filters, a brand which just tells you how you can clean your AC filter at home kind of uh,
yeah, that was actually
cares. Yeah, that was a good example, because then that brand is caring for you, talking about health and hygiene
mm,
regardless of the product. I mean, it is
mm,
not mentioning anything about the product feature. It's
mm,
just a health and hygiene route and kind of a social message impact.
mm.
But I think this is the only one idea we got across 8 groups.
Okay, so I'll just ask the team if anyone else has any other questions.
Sure.
No, I think we are all. I think we are all good for now. If I
Okay.
have any more questions, I'll
Mhm.
I'll leave you an email.
Sure, definitely.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So thank you
Thank you
all.
so much. Thank you.
Okay. And um, yeah,
I think they're joining back.
we found out a lot about the Indian market and a lot of insight.
Yeah. Thank you
Good
so
job.
much.
Good job.
Thank you
Great.
so
We are
much.
really
Okay.
sorry
Thank
for
you.
the first day fiasco,
Yeah.
but I could see that you're smiling, and I understand that you're happy with the activities that has gone for the past 3 days.
Yes.
Thank you.
We could improve the brand image from day 1 to day 3.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thank you all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks.
Bye.